interest, or credit checks.
Hurry back.
No guarantees. Diapers are so hard to find.
Get Empower Cash Advance up to $250 instantly. Download the Empower app today.
So I want to know about basic accountability.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, former CEOs grilled on Capitol Hill over the failure of their banks. What they are saying caused those banks to fold.
If the president has something he's willing to put on the table, it's time now.
Plus, the clock is ticking as top congressional leaders and the White House continue talks over the debt limit. The discussion's happening today in Washington.
While we have backup drugs that we can use, this is the most effective one, and we know that there will be a substantial harm if it's taken off the market.
An appeals court set to hear arguments this week over access to a commonly used abortion drug, the fight that sparked it all and where it could head next.
Imperative that we don't have the luxury of not getting this right because the stakes are too high.
And we continue our series, The Truth About Crime, what schools are doing to keep children safe as the threat of gun violence grows. Scripps News Live begins right now. Hey there, very good Tuesday afternoon to you. Welcome to Scripps News Live. It is now 3 p.m. in the East, 12 p.m. out West, and I'm Veronica De La Cruz. Developing today, former executives answering questions on Capitol Hill after their banks folded. Now, you might remember both Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank collapsed in early March. Now, the Senate Banking Committee is questioning what took them under and what could have prevented it. Let's get you right out to political correspondent Joy Burnett, who's live for us right now on Capitol Hill. So, Joy, this hearing went on for quite some time. It lasted for what felt like hours, and senators definitely weren't holding back. What were some of their criticisms?
Well, there really was bipartisan criticism on this, Veronica. They were saying that these banks were under bad management. And keep in mind, they were saying this to the faces of those former executives of those banks. And one of the things that they really wanted to hone in on was the compensation packages for these former executives. They were earning millions of dollars each year. And Senator Elizabeth Warren went toe-to-toe with one of those former executives. She wanted to know if they would be willing to give back some of that cash.
How much of the $40 million are you planning to return? How many times are we going to do this dance?
Senator, I promise to cooperate with the regulators as they do.
Are you planning to return a single nickel to what you cost the fund?
Senator, I know there's going to be a process review of compensation.
I'll take that as a no.
And you know, those former executives in their opening statements and throughout the questioning, they really stood by the fact that they believe they did the best that they could and that any bank under these circumstances would have gone under. Just keep in mind, to backtrack a little bit for you, back in March when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank ultimately had to be taken over by the federal government, there was a massive run on the bank, historic in fact, and billions of dollars were being withdrawn. One of the people who testified earlier today, he said that in a 10-hour time span, about $1 million was being withdrawn from their bank, Veronica, every single second.
Now, you had mentioned, Joy, that the criticism was bipartisan, and we just heard Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren very critical of these executives. A couple questions for you. Number one is, was she referring to the money that came from the government to bail these banks out? And number two, in terms of this being bipartisan, what were some of the concerns coming from the Republican side?
That's a really interesting question, Veronica. So for question number one, this wasn't necessarily for money that was coming from the government. It was for their compensation. There is now a bipartisan bill that lawmakers will be considering, and that bill would claw back some of the compensation that these executives already got. Money that they've already been paid, including bonuses. But as you mentioned, this was bipartisan. And Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, he had another line of questioning for one of the other former executives. He wanted to know if they thought they deserved this payment that they got. One of these executives, he had $3 million one particular year just in bonuses. And then in another year, he had $1.5 million. Here's a little bit more of that back and forth.
Now, do you think it's appropriate to pay yourself $1.5 million when the stock of the company you manage declines by 65%?
Senator, there are 2 points to your question. First,
Please.
Is that the determination of my compensation is made by the board of directors and their assessment. And the second part relating to this question on stock, I held roughly 5 times the amount of stock that I was required to, and so clearly I was impacted when the stock price declined.
So, Mr. Baker, you say that the decision was made by the board of directors, so let's focus on them. Do you think that they were wise to award you $1.5 million in cash compensation bonus when the decline of the stock price was 65+%?
Senator, I believe they looked at the performance against the goals that were set up, and they know that I was significantly impacted by the decline in the stock price.
So you just heard that former executive from Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, saying that he too was impacted when these banks were ultimately taken over, then sold. And then we must also let you know that of the 3 people who testified today in front of the Senate Banking Committee, 2 of them are no longer with those banks, Veronica.
All right, Avajoy Burnett reporting live for us from Capitol Hill. Avajoy, thank you so much. Another major American bank, Wells Fargo, has agreed to pay $1 billion to settle a lawsuit filed by its own shareholders. They allege the company didn't clean up its act. Regulators uncovered a massive fraud scandal in 2018, and Wells Fargo incentivized its employees to open millions of accounts in their customers' names without their knowledge. The new lawsuit alleging the company failed to enact the fixes it promised following that scandal. And now onto the debt ceiling debate. Congressional leaders, including Speaker McCarthy, poised to meet President Biden right now in the Oval Office. And that is amid high tension between both parties over the nation's borrowing limit. Staff from both sides of the aisle have been working on the details. Things like spending caps, energy permitting laws, and changes to work rules for Americans getting federal benefits. Congress needs to come to an agreement on all of it by June 1st in order to avoid a potential default on America's debt. Congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed joining us now live from Capitol Hill with the very latest on these negotiations. Nate, we've been saying the clock is ticking for how many days now, but we know that this meeting was scheduled to begin at 3 p.m. Eastern. Are they meeting right now? And remind us right here, what's at stake, and tell us if there's any optimism that a deal can be done today.
Well, for one, Veronica, we're waiting for official confirmation that this meeting is actually underway, but the stakes are fairly high. Remember, if the U.S. defaults on its debt as soon as June 1st, that could mean that Social Security payments don't go out. That could mean that military salaries don't get paid. That could mean that interest rates would spike. Even the economy could be thrown into turmoil. Now, Speaker McCarthy has been saying for weeks that he wants President Biden to reach an agreement with him on the debt limit. He also thinks that he is telling reporters that he's not optimistic about the possibility of reaching a deal. Take a listen.
Are you optimistic about the debt ceiling talks today yielding results?
Things don't change. The president is the president of the United States. He can make that decision one way or another, but all I know is we got 16 more days to go. I don't think I'd spend 8 days somewhere out of the country.
And that White House meeting is right now. President Biden slated to go to Japan tomorrow for the G7. Really, time is of the essence here. We're just over 2 weeks away before June 1st. That's the date by which Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the U.S. could be unable to pay its bills for the first time in American history if it hits the debt ceiling.
Nate, we know that June 1st, it's barely 2 weeks away now. Are there any other options on the table? I mean, is a deal between President Biden and Speaker McCarthy really the only way out of this?
The main message that Republicans on Capitol Hill, Veronica, are telegraphing is that a deal between President Biden and Speaker McCarthy is going to be the most likely way to get out of this mess. There needs to be a bipartisan solution. Remember, the House of Representatives controlled by Republicans, the Senate controlled by Democrats. So whatever goes to President Biden's desk is going to need that bipartisan support. The Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has made very clear throughout this process he believes the eventual deal is going to be a bilateral deal between Kevin McCarthy and President Biden. Take a listen.
I said it myself back in February, that the only way forward is spending negotiations between the president and the speaker. Speaker McCarthy is right. The Senate Democrat majority has to pass a bill to raise the debt ceiling. the House Republican majority has. So that's where the solution to this looming crisis will be found.
And Veronica, when dealing with the debt ceiling, we have to remember timing is everything. Once a deal is reached, even if a deal is reached between the parties in the Oval Office today, it's still going to take time for that bill to come up for a vote in the House and in the Senate, go to President Biden's desk. Remember, he's out of the country for a little while on this trip to Japan for the G7. So the time, really, the clock is ticking, even though we have over 2 weeks before the U.S. is slated to hit the debt ceiling. The closer and closer we get, the less and less likely that Congress is going to be able to do its job on time. It needs as much time as possible to actually get that bill written, processed, get the parties reading it and agreeing on it, and actually putting it up for a vote in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives.
All right, Nathaniel Reed reporting live from Capitol Hill. Nate, thank you so much. So the head of the company that makes ChatGPT is now calling for government intervention to mitigate the risks of powerful artificial intelligence systems. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman testifying at a Senate hearing today. And people have been concerned that ChatGPT would help students cheat on homework. But now there are even bigger concerns about AI spreading misinformation, violating copyright laws, and dramatically shifting the job landscape. Altman is saying there should be regulatory intervention by governments to make sure that AI stays in check.
For example, the U.S. government might consider a combination of licensing and testing requirements for development and release of AI models above a threshold of capabilities. There are several other areas I mentioned in my written testimony where I believe that companies like ours can partner with governments, including ensuring that the most powerful AI models adhere to a set of safety requirements, facilitating processes to develop and update safety measures, and examining opportunities for global coordination.
And still to come on Scripps News Live, Stephanie Liebergen will have a full report on the hearing, the concerns over privacy, and what it could be on the way as tech leaders and lawmakers navigate artificial intelligence. It is straight ahead at 5 p.m. Eastern, only on Scripps News. So right now, congressional leaders are recovering at home, or congressional staffers rather, after a man attacked them with a metal baseball bat. Police in Virginia confirming a 49-year-old suspect is in custody right now. Investigators say that Jean Catron Pham attacked 2 people at Democratic Representative Jerry Connolly's district office in Fairfax. A surveillance camera at a nearby home captured him chasing a woman while carrying that bat shortly before entering Congressman Connolly's office. Scripps News correspondent Maura Sirianni has more now on the investigation and the calls for increased security at congressional offices.
Yeah, it's really a shame. Capitol Police not releasing a motive just yet, so we don't know whether this attack was indeed politically motivated, but it definitely brings up the issue of security for lawmakers. Representative Connolly said the suspect walked into his office there in Fairfax, Virginia yesterday morning and asked for him by name before assaulting 2 members of his staff. Now, Connolly wasn't there at the time. He was actually attending a ribbon cutting elsewhere in his district, but the congressman said the suspect then hit one of his senior aides in the head with that metal baseball bat before striking an intern on her first day of work. And the suspect didn't stop there. Listen to what Connolly had to say yesterday.
He was denied access to more staff members he could hurt. He turned his fury on the office itself, and a lot of broken glass, destroyed computers, some furniture.
Connolly calling the attack unconscionable. The 49-year-old suspect, you see him here, faces charges of malicious wounding and aggravated malicious wounding. His father telling CNN he suffers from schizophrenia. Connolly said he doesn't think there was a motive, adding, "I think we are talking about real mental illness." Well, this disturbing new video was taken shortly before the attack at Connolly's office. It shows the suspect chasing a woman who lives nearby with a baseball bat. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger testified last month that threats against members of Congress are up 400% over the past 6 years. So startling there. Now, in March, a staff member of Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul was stabbed in D.C. And then in February, police say Democratic Rep Angie Craig of Minnesota was assaulted in an elevator. That one also taking place in Washington, D.C. And then last October, a man attacking the husband of then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi with a hammer in the couple's home in San Francisco. Now, on the heels of the attack at his office yesterday, Representative Connolly is calling for additional security security funding to better protect lawmakers' offices in their districts. Again, thankfully today, both of his aides are okay. They were released from the hospital.
All right, Maura, thank you so much for that report. Straight ahead on Scripps News Live, the fight over access to the abortion pill heading to an appeals court tomorrow. What a decision there could mean for FDA approvals for other drugs. But first, a new report criticizing the FDA for its investigation into possible ties between Russia and Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. We're going to take a closer look after a break.
All this week, go behind the myths of criminality in America.
If people feel unsafe, then that's a problem.
The truth about crime. All this week, only on Scripps News.
This year, Americans will spend $41 billion on auto repairs.
That's right, billions with a B. Why is that number so high? Because cars break down. Your vehicle is going to end up in a shop like this too, and if it's no longer under warranty, you're the one who has to pay the bill, and it could cost you thousands of dollars. That is, unless you call CarShield. With a plan through CarShield, administrators will pay for those costly repairs directly to the mechanic of your choice, including dealerships. That means you get protection on major parts and systems like the engine, transmission, electrical systems, and more. Plus, 24/7 emergency services for flat or damaged tires, lockouts, dead batteries, and towing at no additional cost. And there are even rental car options to keep you on the road.
I've been a mechanic for 35 plus years now. I've seen thousands of repairs over the years. My happiest customers are the ones that come in who have some kind of auto protection policy that's going to cover the repair that they wasn't expecting anyway. I feel great about recommending CarShield to everybody I see.
CarShield has a rich history of dependability, reliability, and success, and has been featured on leading networks like ABC, CNN, Fox News, and more. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company.
My mom told me to call CarShield, and I saved $5,000. You should always listen to your mom.
As soon as my car broke down, CarShield jumped into action, and I had my car back within days.
I've been with CarShield for close to 7 years. I have 3 vehicles covered, and I saved close to $9,000.
I called CarShield and saved over $5,000.
Yes, CarShield is a good value. Every plan through CarShield comes with a price lock guarantee, which means no matter how many repairs you need, the price you pay today will never change for as long as you cover your car.
Call now and save money with your price lock guarantee. It's not a matter of if your car will break down, but when. Call CarShield now before it's too late. Call 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264.
How does Klein & Spector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein & Spector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein & Spector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein & Spector.
These bats will come out. Oh my God.
On a special 1 hour in real life.
Do they know where they're heading tonight? Are they thinking of their past?
I can feel her trembling.
The goal to create something like a Google Translate for non-human languages.
We're going to play back the call. An elephant should respond. You ready?
That's amazing. Voices of Nature on In Real Life. New episode Sunday night at 8/7 Central. Only on Scripps News.
Report on the FBI's 2016 investigation into then-candidate Donald Trump's alleged campaign ties to Russia criticized the FBI and accused the agency of using faulty evidence to launch the probe. The Durham report, led by federal prosecutor John Durham, who was appointed in 2019 by Trump's Attorney General William Barr, concluded that the FBI never should have launched this investigation. The report said the Bureau, quote, willfully ignored material information, end quote, and that it didn't have sufficient evidence to open the case. Trump, now running for president for a 3rd time, says the report exonerates him and that it was all a political witch hunt from the get-go. David Salvo is the managing director of the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which is a bipartisan national security advocacy group. David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to be with you, Veronica.
So, David, let's go ahead and begin right here with the politics of this probe, because Trump's Attorney General William Barr launched this investigation, the Durham report, in 2019 after the release of the Mueller report. Now, William Barr, who was appointed by Trump, also appointed Durham, and some are saying that Durham's investigation is politically motivated. What is your response?
Well, my response is that the aftermath of the Durham report is what's going to inflame politicization over the whole question of Russian interference in our elections, in our democracy. You know, I would hope that by 2023, we've agreed that there was a massive Russian interference campaign in the 2016 election. It almost doesn't matter at this point whether there was collusion or whether the interference campaign swung the vote for Donald Trump. We should be long beyond that. What we should be doing is trying to address the very vulnerabilities that made us so susceptible to this campaign in the first place, especially on the heels of the 2024 campaign. And that's not happening. What we're doing is just relitigating the same issues that have consumed us for the last 6.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see what you're saying, because everything that is in the report has been reported already. But are there any other takeaways here? What do you make of the report, its conclusion, and how the FBI handled it? Did the FBI make an error in opening this probe to begin with? I mean, they're saying that they've made dozens of corrective actions. They've looked at several reforms since this probe was launched in 2016. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think the Bureau actually has been rather forthcoming that there were policy and procedural flaws that led them to rely on raw and unvetted intelligence that led them to open this investigation. And, you know, they've, at least if you take them at their word, they've taken steps to rectify those flaws that the Durham report, again, sort of rehashes. So I think, you know, largely the Durham report captures and maybe emphasizes a lot of the material that the Bureau has sort of acknowledged was problematic in their investigation of the whole collusion question. So, you know, there, I think we could have sort of a sober debate about the merits of the report, and clearly there were problems in Bureau policy, but I think we're going to be focusing less on that and more simply on the politics of it all, and that's really to our own disadvantage.
Yes. I mean, we're talking about the politicization of the investigation, politics in general. And to your point, look, let's talk about the Mueller report, which found that Russia did interfere in the 2016 presidential election in order to undermine Hillary Clinton's campaign and to assist Trump, according to factcheck.com, other sources as well. And I think the issue here is that we have separate investigations on the same case that really arrive at different conclusions, and now it's out there for the American public to kind of parse. So what should Americans believe here?
Well, I think, look, there's kernels of truth in both these reports. The Mueller report produces a preponderance of evidence listing numerous tools and tactics that the Russian government used to interfere in the 2016 campaign. So even if you leave aside the highly politicized charge of collusion, and let's note that the Mueller report did not conclude that there was collusion, at least not enough to charge anybody with, there's still this huge amount of evidence showing that a foreign power tried to sway Americans' votes using cyber incursions of electoral machinery, using a massive information operation that really tried to play both sides against each other, that put Americans in the street against one another, organized by Russian intelligence assets. Those are facts. Those are facts captured by the Mueller report, and there are facts in the Durham report that show, you know, flaws in FBI policy. Those can be facts too. They're not mutually exclusive sets of facts.
So the former president reacted to this report on his platform, Truth Social, and here's what he said in part, quote, "The FBI never should have launched the Trump-Russia probe and that the American public was scammed." He says that this report exonerates him. What do you make of his remarks?
I think we should be focused less on what former President Trump said and more simply on the very question that a foreign power did try to interfere in one of our elections. That is a fact. Again, whether or not it led to Trump's victory is almost immaterial at this point. So I'm not even paying attention to the former president's words right now. What I wish Democrats and Republicans were doing were coming together to figure out what were the vulnerabilities that let Russia, and maybe it'll be China tomorrow, interfere in one of our presidential elections. That should be what the conversation in Washington is all about. And, you know, the rest, honestly, is just noise. And what the former president's saying it is just noise to me as well.
So, David, ahead of 2024, what do you think needs to happen here? What should be happening next?
Well, there are still, you know, a lot of holes in transparency policies, financial legislation that allows countries like Russia and China to move money into the United States that can then get sort of funneled into our political system. Our very openness still makes us susceptible to information operations. The Chinese and the Iranians are moving into this space more, even more than, well, the Russians are always going to be involved in this space, but China and Iran are doing this more and more. So there are more players in this field. And, all the partisan infighting that we do, it makes us very susceptible to foreign powers and trying to pour fuel on the fire and amplify those divisions between us. So really what I'd like to see is more bipartisan consensus about how to address legislative and policy vulnerabilities in our system that facilitate this type of interference, because it could be China tomorrow, and there's more consensus between Democrats and Republicans on China. So I don't know why China gets sort of that allows for that consensus and Russia doesn't. I'd just like us to focus on the problem itself as opposed to relitigating the politics of what happened 7 years ago.
And quickly, David, before I let you go, what do you have to say to the American public as we head into this next election cycle? What do you think people need to know?
Well, there are two real factors that allow for this type of, interference from outside powers. Mostly these are problems of our own making, right? We are a fundamentally divided nation, and authoritarian regimes like China and Russia and Iran, it's to their advantage to try to amplify those divisions. Like, that is a fact. They want democracy in the United States to be messy. They want American politicians to be distracted by our own domestic problems. So that is a real danger in our system, in our society. And also, because we've been so consumed by this domestic discord, we've taken the eye off the ball of the fact that China in particular and Russia and these other governments are going to interfere. They're going to try to interfere in 2024. It doesn't mean that it's going to change the outcome of a vote, but it's reprehensible enough, and it should be something that all Americans are concerned about, that this activity is happening. And while they should trust the integrity of our elections, they should lean on our politicians to actually try to plug the holes in the system that allow these attempts to happen in the first place.
David Salvo is the Managing Director for Securing Democracy. David, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Straight ahead on Scripps News Live, making safer schools. The question weighing right now on districts nationwide as gun violence intensifies. Also, arguments heading before an appeals court tomorrow over the abortion pill. How we got to this point and the likely next steps beyond just this week's hearing. We'll be right back.
You're looking pretty good, Mr. Johnson. But we need to take some x-rays today.
That's why.
Yes, x-rays are expensive, but the front desk said you recently enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan with extra benefits that now cover today's x-rays and cleaning costs.
Wow, okay.
Well, Medicare Parts A and B do not cover your routine dental coverage like cleanings, fillings, or x-rays. Yes, you have a Medicare Part C plan, commonly called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Part C plans cover everything in Part A and Part B, plus extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing.
Wow. That's great that my plan includes dental coverage that helps pay for these costs.
Yes, Mr. Johnson. A Medicare Part C plan could include dental coverage that pays for routine dental exams and teeth cleanings, dental x-rays, fillings, tooth extractions, root canals, dentures, implants, and crowns.
If you're losing coverage, moving, or new to Medicare, call to speak with a licensed insurance agent. You don't get a plan with these benefits automatically, so it's always good to call to see if there's a plan with extra benefits available in your zip code. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now because there may be plans available with additional benefits that are simply not covered under Medicare Parts A and B, like routine dental coverage. In fact, 24 million Medicare beneficiaries do not have any dental coverage. Here's the good news. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there is a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits. Remember, you don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2023 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Just call 800-614-5203. 800-614-5203.
Attention firefighters, first responders, military base personnel, and airport workers, listen closely to this important legal announcement. Have you been exposed to chemical-based firefighting foam? If so, you may be entitled to a substantial cash award without going to court. For decades, aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, has been used to extinguish liquid fuel fires. A scientific study has now shown that the chemicals used to make AFFF are highly toxic to humans and can cause a significant risk of developing several types of cancer, including kidney, pancreatic, thyroid, prostate, bladder, testicular, liver, or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you or a loved one are a firefighter, first responder, airport worker, or member of the military that has used firefighting foam and has been diagnosed with cancer, please call the Negligence Network to file your claim today. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call the Negligence Network to see if you're eligible for substantial compensation. Call 1-800-300-4858. That's 1-800-300-4858.
Hey there, welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica De La Cruz. It's 1:30. Let's take a look at some of the other stories that we're keeping an eye on for you today. Despite all the controversy during the COVID pandemic, the public's faith in most childhood vaccines remains steady. It's all according to a new survey from the Pew Research Center. 9 out of 10 adults say the benefits of MMR vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella outweigh the risks. Now, in contrast, 6 out of 10 Americans say the same about the COVID-19 vaccine. Well, Amazon is updating its delivery plans, and that could mean getting shipments out to you even faster. The retail giant will use 8 regions in smaller geographic areas, and those centers will be set up to send products over shorter distances. So instead of 2-day shipping, you can actually get your purchases in a day or less. Amazon says that items that are closer to you will appear higher up in the search results on the website or in the app. They're hoping that the new regions cut costs as well. And happening tomorrow, 3 conservative appeals court judges will hear arguments on whether a widely used abortion drug should remain available. All 3 have a history of supporting restrictions on abortions. The hearing comes after a Texas judge's ruling put the Food and Drug Administration's approval of mifepristone on hold. Now, no matter how the appeals court rules, the case is likely to head back to the Supreme Court. National political correspondent Alex Miller has been tracking the latest developments in this case and joins us now live from New York. All right, Alex, walk us through the timeline in this situation. How did we arrive here exactly?
Well, if you think about it, this has actually been an issue for decades. This particular drug has been approved for well over 35 years. First, it was approved in France 35 years ago. It took over a decade for it to be approved here in the United States. And then after that approval in 2000, went relatively unnoticed. And now, just within the last few months, obviously, since Roe was overturned, we are now looking at the possibility that this drug could be taken off the market.
Abortion access is about to be back up for debate.
My body, my choice.
A Texas judge in April ruled mifepristone, the most commonly used abortion medication in America, was not approved correctly by the Food and Drug Administration more than 2 decades ago, and that it should be banned nationwide. That set off a court process now on the steps of the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, but not before it made a pit stop at the nation's highest court. 7 Supreme Court justices agreed to stay the decision, meaning the drug can still be used pending the appeals court decision, a relief to medication advocates like Kirsten Moore.
We don't take that for granted.
Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito were the only 2 to dissent, with Alito writing the drug makers, quote, are not entitled to a stay because they have not shown that they are likely to suffer irreparable harm in the interim.
I don't know how that's not irreparable harm. Your business basically ceases to exist.
While we have backup drugs that we can use, this is the most effective one. And we know that there will be a substantial harm if it's taken off the market.
American Medical Association President Dr. Jack Resnick says not only is this the main way physicians manage abortions, but miscarriages as well. But anti-abortion advocates say the drug was approved too quickly and is not safe for women.
When it comes to the safety, there's virtually nothing the FDA can do because of the way that this drug acts on a woman's body.
Mary Zock of the Family Research Council says the FDA should be making sure these drugs are safe and believes it hasn't done its due diligence.
They failed to do that in this case, and they should be held accountable for that.
But records show there were 4 years between the FDA application and approval.
Even when it first came up for approval, asked for more and more studies. We have just extensive data. We know that it's safe and effective.
Moore says the FDA is no stranger to these kinds of lawsuits, but up until this case, judges have deferred to the FDA's scientific expertise.
It's been really more around interpretation of the law. Congress gave you this authority, they didn't give you this authority. You didn't treat this patent correctly, so this generic is not approved. And that split between courts giving FDA deference, FDA also gives courts deference. So if a court orders FDA to do something, FDA typically does it.
Even further, there are concerns a decision in favor of opponents of abortion could change the way the courts handle any drug approval by the FDA.
That is going to have a chilling effect on our ability as drug makers, as drug sponsors, to continue to innovate, because it just throws everything up into the air.
You can imagine that pretty soon we'd start seeing lawsuits because somebody doesn't like contraceptives, or somebody doesn't like HIV drugs, or somebody doesn't like cancer drugs that happen to have been tested on stem cells.
And Veronica, nobody should expect a decision right away when the appeals court hears these arguments. They are not expected to make a decision for quite some time, but really regardless of what that decision ends up being, this is likely to make it all the way to the Supreme Court again, because obviously both sides would appeal the appeals court decision.
I want to go ahead and focus on what's going to be happening tomorrow, though, Alex. What do we know right now about those 3 conservative appeals court judges? What more can you tell us about them exactly?
Well, they are all conservative judges. They were appointed by Republicans. One of them clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas. One of them was a Republican representative for a period of time. And then one of them really has a history of an anti-abortion record when deciding these cases. The other 2 have had, voting histories that have to do with anti-abortion opinions, or have written things as lawyers about it. But one particular judge, she really has a history being hostile to abortion. She prevented a Planned Parenthood from being opened in Louisiana. She said that medication abortion, which is obviously what this case is predicated on, is not an essential procedure. So that she was able to stop abortions, or be part of a panel that stopped abortions in Texas for about a month. And she's heard a number of cases, because Texas, obviously a very controversial state when it comes to abortion, falls under the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. So all of the really controversial cases that we have heard in the last few years, even before Roe was overturned, she has been a part of those appeals court decisions.
All right, national correspondent Alex Miller, thank you so much for the background on all of this. We'll be watching this closely tomorrow. Our Truth About Crime series continues now with a critical look at school shootings. According to Education Week, there have been 19 school shootings resulting in injuries or deaths this year so far. And we're not even halfway through 2023. It is statistics like these and the fear that the next shooting could happen at their school that is prompting many school administrators to look at new ways to protect their students. It's also sparking a serious conversation about the ways that schools are designed. Tools like metal detectors are one obvious way to protect students. But did you know that designing a curved hallway could also save lives? Scripps News national correspondent Jesse Cohen explains how.
When I stepped inside here at Caledonia High School in Michigan, the first thing that came to mind was, wow, schools did not look like this back in my day. And there are reasons the architectural layout is changing. One of the most important is school safety.
1999 was the start of a rude awakening. Columbine.
So that was, I think, the nation's wake-up call to violence in schools.
You know, this is my 27th year as an educator, and I remember all the way back to Columbine and the impact that that had on the psyche of public schools and safety.
Back then, schools weren't necessarily designed to stop a shooter.
It's really for functionality. So square footage is important. How many desks and chairs can you get in an area? Do you have the blackboard? And the biggest pieces we thought about for safety was, where is the exit in case of a fire?
The reality is different now. In the past 5 years, more than 150 shootings inside schools have resulted in either injuries or deaths, according to Ed Week.
It's imperative that we don't have the luxury of not getting this right because the stakes are too high.
Dr. Diedrich Martin is the superintendent of Caledonia Community Schools in West Michigan.
Please excuse varsity softball.
His district is changing the way it builds schools.
If there's anything about this school that you could point out and say, I really want other places across the country to see this as a model, what would that be?
One, the secure entries. Two, is having some secure filming area around the windows. Those are things. And really, it's the staff that are in the buildings that are going to make it work.
Upgrades in schools like curved hallways and corridors divided by fire doors and stronger locks. Other ideas impact classrooms themselves. Reshaped rooms create student safe zones to hide, not visible from the door. Even classroom door barricade systems that can be quickly installed. Tower Pinkster specializes in upgrading classrooms. They do about $400 million of K-12 construction a year.
If there's a receptionist here, they can see you on approach. They can see you in the vestibule. They can see you as you come in.
Matthew Slagle leads the firm's design for K-12 schools.
When you walk in a school that you guys are working on right now, I mean, what are some of the biggest differences that we see?
Well, certainly the entry point that you mentioned, what we call a secure vestibule, where once the bell rings, you can't get into the school anyway but that front entry door, and you're guided into the office.
Schools around the country are also considering new social spaces to support students' mental health, balancing safety with social development. As the school resource officer at Caledonia High School, Patrick Stewart sees firsthand the difference those types of spaces can make.
So as a school resource officer, yes, I am a law enforcement official first and foremost to keep them safe. But I'm also an informal counselor, a mentor, a teacher, an educator.
Stewart says balance is important, especially now.
Do you think it's safe to say that changes architecturally to schools across the country is going to be crucial in keeping our kids safe, regardless of any other actions that are taken?
Absolutely, regardless of any other legislative action or what have you. We are in a time, or we're living in a time where we have to really think about function, form, and security.
A sad reality, resigned to the fact that threats of school shootings are here to stay. Maybe the buildings themselves could help save lives. Jesse Cohen, Scripps News, Caledonia, Michigan.
And all this week on Scripps News, we're going to have more stories uncovering the truth about crime in America. You can tune in Thursday night for a Scripps News special. Our Del Walters will be hosting a live discussion with eye-opening insight from a panel of special guests. Again, that is this Thursday night at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, only on Scripps News. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signing legislation to defund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, why he is saying it's all to help colleges and universities, and the reaction from some students across the state. Plus, we'd like to hear from you. You can always give us a call on our Scripps News viewer hotline, toll-free, 1-833-4-SCRIPPS. Again, it's 1-833-472-7477. You can share your comments and story ideas with us at any time. We'll be right back.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
This is an important message for anyone and everyone on or eligible for Medicare. If Medicare is important to you, then you need to hear this message because Medicare benefits matter to millions of Americans. Did you know Medicare has different parts, including Medicare Part A and Part B, often called Original Medicare? And then there's Medicare Part C, representing Medicare Advantage plans, and Part D for prescription drug coverage. Call 800-912-2786 now for your free Medicare coverage checkup. We can look up your plan and see if you're missing out on a plan with extra benefits or if your income qualifies you to reduce costs on your prescription medications. Did you know there are different enrollment periods like the Medicare annual enrollment period when beneficiaries can enroll in or change coverage? But there are also certain conditions or qualifications that may allow you to qualify for a special enrollment period any time of the year. So call the number on your screen now for your free Medicare coverage checkup. This is a free service that you can call at absolutely no cost to you.
I'm on Medicare. I called to see if my income qualified for lower prescription medication costs. The friendly agent was very knowledgeable, and I found out I qualified for a special enrollment period, so I'm so glad I called.
We can look up your plan and see if you are missing out on a plan with extra benefits. We can also check to see if your income qualifies you to reduce the cost of your prescription medications. And we can even tell you if you qualify for a special enrollment period. It's your free Medicare coverage checkup at absolutely no cost to you. Just call 800-912-2786 and you can speak with a licensed agent who can check up on your plan and answer your questions. The Medicare Benefits and Questions line is open and anyone on or eligible for Medicare can call. The call and Medicare coverage checkup is free with no obligation. Call now. We love talking to people with Medicare, and the call is free. Just call 800-912-2786. 800-912-2786.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Join renowned journalists and filmmakers.
Oh my God.
For news stories every week.
What else do we have to take?
Scripps News Showcase. Sunday nights at 9/8 Central on Scripps News.
Hey there, welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica De La Cruz. So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has been claiming another victory in his self-declared war on woke. He signed a bill to defund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at the state's public colleges and universities. DeSantis is saying he wants accountability for higher education.
What happens is these accreditors will say, no, you must have DEI as part of your operating ethos in order to earn accreditation. That's ridiculous. Who elected these people to make such a determination? That is them sitting in a perch, unaccountable to anybody else, trying to impose that on the university system without any ability for us to have a check and balance.
The governor signed the bill in Sarasota at New College of Florida. The traditionally progressive school drew national attention after DeSantis appointed a group of conservatives to the board of trustees while also eliminating the school's diversity, equity, and inclusion office. Now, on the other side of the state, Florida Atlantic University students are saying that they fear campuses won't be as welcoming because of this new law. Chris Gilmore from Scripps News West Palm Beach spoke with them about their concerns.
DEI is better viewed as standing for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions.
Florida Atlantic University junior Sarah Romeo says she disagrees.
Diversity is important, and there's nothing wrong with including and making people feel like they
It doesn't put any. With recent controversial diversity, equity, and inclusion legislation making its way to the governor's desk, Romeo and her friends worry that comfort on campus won't last long.
It's creating a divide that doesn't need to be there between every single community, which honestly sucks because we've worked so hard in the past to get to where we are, and it feels like we're taking 50 steps backwards.
Early Monday afternoon, Governor DeSantis signed Senate Bill 266 into law. It prohibits institutions from spending federal or state dollars on what his office calls discriminatory initiatives like DEI programs.
And what this does is reorient our universities back to their traditional mission. And part of that traditional mission is to treat people as individuals, not to try to divvy them up based on any type of superficial characteristics. We're going to elevate merit and achievement above identification with certain groups.
Chair of Government Relations for FAU Staff Union, United Faculty Florida, Nicole Morris, defines DEI and how it affects people like them.
It's an effort to ensure that our institutions are welcoming and accessible to all. Historically, certain people, including people like myself, a queer person, someone who was assigned female at birth, we have not been invited into institutions. And of course, for people of color, that is even compounded by the legacy of discrimination and segregation.
Both Romeo and Kobe agree seeing DEI initiatives go away across the state makes FAU and Florida seem less welcoming.
That was Chris Gilmore reporting there. Straight out on Scripps News Live, are you looking to move anytime soon? Up next, where you can find the best places to live all across the country. And we'd like to remind you right here to follow us at Scripps News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. We'll be right back.
There's a lot to watch on TV these days. Problem is, most streaming options are incredibly pricey, and you'll end up paying for the local channels you can get for free. Luckily, there's a solution. Sling is only $40 a month. And you get awesome stuff like sports, news, and today's hottest TV for half of what the other guys cost. If you already get free locals with an antenna, now you can easily add the channels you're missing with Sling. It's the TV you love for a price you'll love. Visit sling.com/antenna to learn more.
Attention all seniors. You can now get up to $50,000 for your funeral and other final expenses, including your credit card debt, with no medical exam, starting at less than $1 a day.
Oh, honey, you're dead and I can't stop talking about this baby that's coming.
We've also been thinking a lot about our future. And no matter what, we want to make sure we aren't leaving you and your family with any of our debts.
Just last week, we read that the price of a funeral can be $8,000 or more.
Wow, Jeff and I definitely would not have the money to pay for that.
And that's just a funeral. But you don't have to worry. We called, and with one phone call, we were eligible for $50,000 for our funeral and final expenses.
Well, that's great, but don't you need to take a medical exam to qualify? You and Mom have some health issues.
No. There's no medical exam, and we were able to get coverage right over the phone.
And our rates can never be increased, our benefits can never be decreased, and our coverage can never be canceled.
I'm so glad you made that call.
Don't leave loved ones with your debt. Call 800-775-9406 now and see if you qualify for up to $50,000 for your funeral and other final expenses, starting at less than $1 a day. There's no medical exam, and you can be approved even if you have pre-existing health conditions. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. There's no obligation. Call 800-775-9406 now. There's no paperwork, no hidden fees, and no waiting periods. And you can start coverage right over the phone, starting at less than $1 a day. Call 800-775-9406. That's 800-775-9406. 800-775-9406.
I don't get paid until next week.
I got you. I'm Dave, and I can spot you up to $500 of your future money instantly.
Up to $500 instantly? What else is in my future?
A new couch. Only!
Get up to $500 instantly with Dave.
Sure, you'll teach her how to drive a car. Then use Greenlight to power her independence with crash detection with 911 dispatch, family location sharing, and emergency SOS alerts. Invest in your best investment with Greenlight.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. NASA researchers heading to Mars. Well, sort of. 4 people will live inside a simulated Mars base in Texas for just over a year. It's around the same length as a manned mission to Mars. They're going to have a pre-planned schedule with activities and science work. The Mars Dune Alpha base also has an outside area that mimics the Martian surface. Very cool. So if you've been thinking about relocating, now is the time. U.S. News & World Report just dropped its annual list of best places to live. And the top 5 spots might actually surprise you. Scripps News' Stephen Gradick has the details.
River, a thriving downtown, and sometimes prime seats for the Northern Lights.
The sky is, lately it's undescribable.
For decades, photographer Jason Brodsky has captured vivid greens and brilliant purples, dancing across the night skies. But he says the best places to photograph them isn't Alaska or even Iceland. It's Sunset Beach Park in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I've been from one end of the country to the other, and I keep coming back here.
And U.S. News & World Report understands why. Out of 150 American cities, the magazine ranked Green Bay as the best place to live, based on the area's job market, value, quality of life, and people's desire to live there. Rounding out the top 5 are Huntsville, Alabama, Raleigh and Durham in North Carolina, Boulder, Colorado, and Sarasota, Florida. Each of these cities boasts good job opportunities, like in Huntsville, where many work at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, or in Raleigh-Durham, which is known for its research and university jobs. Boulder is heavily desirable due to its countless wellness offerings, from forest bathing, rock climbing, and cycling, all against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. And while Sarasota used to be dubbed a retiree's playground, the fastest-growing city is also amongst U.S. News' top 10 safest places to live, with an excellent nightlife to people ratio. In a press release, Devin Thorsby, a real estate editor at U.S. News, says beyond affordability and jobs, people are also considering severe weather risk and the community's ability to recover from disasters. That's why this year, the list included weather as part of its desirability index, evaluating the number of days the temperature fell between 33 and 89 degrees. But no matter which city you end up on this list, odds are you'll end up somewhere with below average crime rates, affordable places to live, and hopefully an overall good quality of life. For Scripps News, Stephen Gradick, Atlanta.
Well, it is Taco Tuesday, and now one fast food chain is trying to make sure that it is Taco Tuesday for all. Taco John's trademarked the phrase more than 30 years ago, sending cease and desist letters to other restaurants who use it. So Taco Bell is stepping in, filing a petition with the Patent and Trademark Office. They say that nobody should have the exclusive right because it's a common phrase. The trademark appeal process could be lengthy, though, possibly up to 2 years. The news continues right here. I'm Veronica De La Cruz. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Del Walters is going to pick up our coverage on the debt ceiling as top leaders meet with President Biden and the White House. It's all coming up next on Scripps News Live. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.